Hi, everyone. It's Friday and it's time for Ask an Attorney. And this week I just wanted to start out with saying my condolences to George Floyd and his family and loved ones and all the other individuals that have lost their lives as a result of what happened on that horrible, horrible day. Um, I would also just like to express that Boswell Law Firm, we stand behind the protests that are peaceful, and we would encourage that violence is not the answer to these protests, and it actually is obscuring the message that is very, very important to be out there. And so we would just ask that everybody remain peaceful, and that we get the word out there that needs to be gotten out there, that Black Lives Matter. We need to end the police brutality. We need better training. We need to end the violence that's going back towards the police as a result of all of this. It's we just need to end the violence. Um, so protest, be peaceful, and let's get the word out and make a difference in the world without the violence. I was reading that we have, I want to say, over 12 deaths that's been associated with this. It's probably gone up since I've read that. 4,400 people have been arrested during this time. So let's just get out there. Let's spread the word, but let's do it in a peaceful manner and make a difference. So now let's talk about COVID. So you know, the COVID pandemic has kind of been overshadowed with the protests that have been going on. And, we're seeing an uptick in number of cases in the hospitals. We're starting to get it to the yellow zone of the number of beds that are occupied as compared to the number of beds that are available. And so we just need to continue being vigilant and smart. So be out there and live your lives. Just take the proper precautions so that you don't end up one of the statistics. Which leads me into what we're going to talk about today. So, I get asked a lot, why do I need a will? I don't really have anything. Everything's going to go to my wife or her husband. And that's not necessarily the case. And so I was reading, and I want to double check these. Um, I want to say that we had 384 deaths in the Houston and surrounding areas from COVID, just COVID alone. And a national average that I saw was 66% of Americans die without a will. So that means, if I did the math right, that just from the COVID deaths, if we use that statistics, we had just over 253 people that passed away without a will from the COVID. So it's really important that you get your planning in place, and that we make sure that we can take care of our last affairs, and it's a gift to our family to have our affairs in order. So let's talk. Let me see if I can find this here about what happens when we don't have a will. So a lot depends on what kind of property we're talking about, and whether it was community or separate property. What will happen? And these are very general. There's a lot of things that we look at to see what's going on. But generally speaking, we have two types of property. So we have real property and we have personal property. Real property is real estate and anything attached to it. Personal property is everything else. So we also have community and separate. So separate property is anything that you own prior to marriage, anything that you get during marriage from somebody dying and leaving it to you, or somebody giving you a gift. Everything else that is gotten during marriage is community property. So what happens when somebody passes away and they don't have a will? Texas has set out some very confusing guidelines on what happens, but we've had some judges put together some nice little charts, and so that's what I'm going to be looking at so that I make sure that I keep this straight. So we're going to talk about if you have separate property and you're married and you have children. So let's say you had a separate property house. That separate property house goes to your children, basically. Um, so your spouse retains what we call 1/3 life estate. So that means that they have the right to live there for their life. If they ever stop occupying that house, then that right is revoked and ownership goes to the children. um, During their time there, they pay the bills, they keep the house in good condition, they keep it insured, they pay the mortgage on it, and when they pass, they don't have the right to sell their interest or to leave it to anybody in their will. That ownership automatically goes to the spouse that passed away's children. Personal property, same thing. 1/3 goes to the spouse, and the children take the other 2/3 of any personal property that was left that was separate property. So well, let's talk about community property. So community property is you each own half. So you each have a 50% interest in the property. So for real estate, if we have a situation where all of the surviving children are also children of the surviving spouse, then the surviving spouse inherits everything. If we have one child that was outside of that marriage, it gets a little more complicated. So if we had no children, um, sorry, I just lost my spot. So if we had no children and we have somebody that was widowed, then and we have surviving parents of that person, then the surviving parents will split the inheritance. So half of everything goes to the parents. If we have one parent alive and one parent dead and there's siblings, then half goes to that parent that's living and the other half is split equally between the siblings. Excuse me, I'm having allergy issues today, so bear with me. So if we have a widow or widower with children, then everything goes to the children or the children's descendants. So if we have a married person that has no children and we have separate property, this is that property that was either had before marriage or was gotten during the marriage by somebody passing away and leaving it to you or a gift, then one half of that property is retained by the or goes to the surviving spouse. And the parents, so if there's no children, the parents of the person that passed away receive a quarter each if they're both living. If there's one parent that survives, then a quarter goes to that parent, and the other quarter is split between the siblings. So if there's no surviving parent, then one half goes to the surviving spouse and one half goes to the siblings of the person that passed away. This is real estate. If there are no siblings, no parents, nobody out there, and there's no descendants of those parents and siblings, so nieces, nephews, that sort of thing, then the spouse would receive everything. All personal property goes to the surviving spouse. If there's no siblings and there are parents, then one half goes to the parents, one half goes to the surviving spouse. So now community property is a little different. So if we have community property, no children, then everything is taken by the surviving spouse. So it gets a little tricky. Then Texas tries to find a blood relative to leave the property to. But if you don't have children and it was a separate property home that you're living in, then you have to sorry, I got a question and distracted me for a second. But so if you have children, then Texas wants your children to inherit. So I always say they try to go down the line. So they're going to go to children, grandchildren, grandchildren. If they can't find that, then they're going to go up the line to parents. If there are no parents, then they go out to siblings. But don't think that just because you're married that your spouse is going to inherit everything. And the only way to ensure that that happens is to have a properly executed will. So if you have separate property, a separate property home, um, your surviving spouse could end up owning it with your parents or your brothers and sisters, just depending on what the situation is. So to avoid any uncertainties, it's always best to leave property to leave your property via a will. So I've been asked, do children have to be blood related? Yes, they do. Or they have to have been adopted officially with court records. Stepchildren don't inherit. They are not considered blood children. Also, we have situations where somebody may have raised somebody as their own child, but they haven't gone through the formal adoption proceedings, and they would not inherit either. Also, if we're looking at siblings inheriting and you have a half sibling, then that half sibling takes a half share. Same for foster children. They don't have the same rights unless they've gone through the legal adoption proceedings through a court and obtained the adoption certificate. So that's just kind of a overview. The best thing to do is just to get in touch with either us or an attorney that you trust and just get a will done. It's easy. It right now we can get it done virtually at Boswell Law Firm. We have the ability to do virtual notarizations. So we can do everything with video and email, and you don't ever have to leave the comfort of your own home to get this done. So if you're interested, you can reach out to us. You can either send me an email at Duana, Duana, at Boswell, Texas Law. That's BOSWELLTEXASLAW.com. Or you can give us a call at 832-919-6595 and take advantage of our free 15-minute consultation. So everybody out there, stay safe, protest peacefully, take precautions to make sure that you're not getting COVID and getting ill, and just enjoy your life. And it looks like in Houston, we are not going to have to deal with the hurricane or tropical storm this weekend, but just keep an eye on the weather and an eye on the news and enjoy the weekend. We'll see you next week here live talking about things that interest you that you want to know the answers to.